Welcome back, everyone, to Montgomery County's Engage at Home. We are here today and we have a special guest, Sister Kathy. Sister Kathy, would you please introduce yourself?
Yes, I would be happy to, and thank you for having me. I'm a Sister of the Holy Cross. I'm involved in Holy Cross Health right now, which is our outreach to the community, basically. I kind of got here by accident a long time ago when I wanted a year off from teaching, and I was invited to join the staff in the adult daycare center, which I did and loved it. But I was concerned about their families and what was going on with them, and directly and indirectly, that led to the establishment of the Holy Cross Caregiver Resource Center, which is geared to helping caregivers of seniors in all the ways that we can think of. We have a newsletter, support groups, telephone line, email, and we try to make ourselves very available in any way that we can help people with resources, just somebody to listen to their problems, which is usually the biggest help, suggestions for other ways they can tap into. Well, the county is full of resources, and one of them is the Engage at Home that Lily has, but many, many others also that are available to them that very often they don't know about it.
Thank you, Sister Kathy. You've always been an inspiration to me, and you were one of the first people who I met when I joined the county and the Caregiver Support Program. Now, I know that Holy Cross Caregiver Resource Center hosts numerous support groups every single week. And now we're in COVID times. Things have changed. Would you mind sharing with us how Holy Cross Caregiver Resource Center has adapted its support groups to COVID-19?
We started out probably 25 to 30 years ago. We didn't think this was any big deal, so we never paid attention to when it started. But we started with one support group, and the first day one person came whose mother was in the adult daycare. She stayed for the whole 1.5 hours and never came back to another meeting. But we didn't let that discourage us. We moved on, and now we have 7 support groups a week. Oh, and we decided definitely we wanted to do them weekly. And if nobody came, that was fine. We'd be here if they needed us. But if they didn't, that was fine too. And we started out with doing them on Mondays because we figured after a weekend, that might be the hardest time for caregivers. But the program grew kind of quickly, and we now have 3 groups for spouses, 3 groups for those adult children caring for parents or grandparents or whatever it happens to be, and 1 mixed group, which started out as a telephone group, while the others were face-to-face in our support group room. We also have a newsletter that usually comes out 3 times a year. It's been a little neglected during this time, but I hope we will get back to it. And a phone line. And I used to very easily say, well, why don't you just come in and we can talk about this? And I still find myself saying that before I realize that right now we can't do that. So we try to do it on the phone, but that bothers me more than anything, probably, that I can't do that face-to-face, one-to-one thing. But our support groups have moved to WebEx. And as you can probably see, I am not very used to technology. And our poor director spent 3 weeks. First of all, she had to set them up herself. And then 3 weeks sitting beside me, holding my hand, rushing over from her home to see why I couldn't do whatever. But finally, I seem to have gotten more experienced and I'm doing a little better. But I certainly owe it to Kathleen Williams, our director. But they have worked out pretty well. And some people prefer it that way and hope it's not going to change. And others, including me, can't wait till it gets back to face-to-face, which I certainly hope it will. The good part of it, though, is that a lot more people can take advantage of it because it doesn't matter where they live. We have one woman that calls in every week from Texas, people from Virginia, not necessarily Northern Virginia, and Pennsylvania. It's made it available to a lot more people, which I have to keep in mind and be grateful for that. And we see probably between 130 and 140 people a week. And I'm grateful for that. And it really does help so much. We had the perfect meeting on Friday when the caregivers just wrap their arms around virtually, as we're all doing right now, one person who was in great need, and just were so open and welcoming to her that it could have been a perfect thing. That's just the way it's always supposed to work, but it doesn't always. But what we do more in groups is letting the people talk about their feelings, their issues, and they do help each other. I don't mean to not put emphasis on that, but I do think the most important part is letting them get things out of themselves and having others listen to it. And they're saying it to people, not just so-and-so who's a good friend or they meet in the grocery store, but people who are going through similar things and emotional things as they are. And that gives them a much more ready audience. I think that's the biggest change anyway, is the support groups on WebEx. Everything, well, as I said, the inability to meet people face to face and not be available in the office for anything. I am in the office, but my door's closed and there's a mask handy. So it does happen, but basically it's changed a lot. And the feelings of the caregivers have changed a lot. A lot of what they're doing now is dealing with now is the isolation, being cut off from their family members if they are in a facility. And that is the hardest part, because they're not allowed in. And we're now at 4 months. And if you've got an elder person suffering in a facility that you haven't been able to contact personally that long, it's pretty awful. We have people talking through the windows if their person is on a ground level, and they've got virtual calls and Zoom and all those things. But if a person has dementia, they cannot figure out how they can hear you and see you, but they can't touch you. You're there, but you're not there. And sometimes that can just add to the confusion and the pain of both the family member and the person in the facility. It's very hard to decide what's the better thing to do. Just anything you can think of, but they're not all going to be successful.
And it sounds like what you're describing is an example of why, for caregivers, this is an even more important time to be reaching out for support with people who, like yourself, who are experienced facilitators, but also to have that peer-to-peer support, listening, empathizing, that sort of thing.
The other issue that I forgot is almost what I would call a panic of some caregivers, that they cannot go out, they cannot do anything. They just have to stay in their house and protect themselves. And they're beyond putting on a mask and going to a grocery store because they don't want to risk getting it because they are a caregiver. And the most important thing right now is their self-care, which I can't argue with. But I think not getting out of a difficult situation, which often occurs in their own homes, is just adding to the stress of this. And it's taking its toll on the caregivers too.
Very much so. And I think that this is one of the things that we both have seen so much over the years, is that families feel as if they do it the right way, and that they're so acutely aware of the vulnerability of their loved one and how the stress that can cause the caregiver is enormous.
And they're just not realizing, well, they're beginning to realize, though, I think, what that is taking from them and doing to them. And we try to stress self-care, nutritional eating, exercise, anything that will serve as a distraction, but also add something to their lives. A lot of our classes through Holy Cross Community Health are now doing their programs virtually too. So some of the caregivers who couldn't have gone out to do the exercise programs or meditation or whatever can now do it this way virtually. And that helps a lot for those that are taking advantage of it. But of course, they're not all. But it does help. But anything they can do, anybody they can talk to get this out at this time is helpful. And realize they need their sleep and food and exercise and all the things that we all need. But the need is greater for them right now because of the caregiving situation and stress that they're in.
Very much so. Thank you, Sister Kathy. I will be including a link to Holy Cross Caregiver Resource Center that then lists all of their support groups, the dates, the times, and how you register on Engage at Home. So Sister Kathy, you've talked about some of the challenges that you're seeing, the challenges that were there before but now have been exacerbated through COVID-19. Any other advice that you have for caregivers?
First of all, I'd like to thank you for putting that on the link and the advice of how to get into the support groups. And we now need their email address with the WebEx, which I never needed before. But thank you very much for including that. Some of the caregivers have mentioned to me that they have been taking some meditation classes through their use of the computer, and they have found them very, very helpful. And from different groups, they're not hearing it just from each other. So that seems to be a big help, and certainly any kind of prayer and spiritual support that we can find for ourselves, human or divine, is just a gold mine, because we need that so much. We're stripped of so many of our supports. As I said before, exercise is so important. Even though I'm allergic to it, I still have to recommend it to caregivers who need it. But spiritually, certainly being attached to our places of worship. And again, we're not able to take advantage of that like we used to by physically being there. I got to Mass yesterday for the first time in 4 months, which I never ever believed would happen in my life. But there are many spiritual programs on the computer. They're streaming their services, and it does help to be there. My sister even told me she likes that better because it's less distracting. And from watching it, I had to agree with her. Not that I liked it more, but it was less distracting. But it's very meaningful. And, you know, people are doing this especially because we are shut out of our places of worship right now. And many times with contact, if you wanted to talk to a priest or minister, I doubt that I don't know, but I doubt that you can do that personally any more than you can with me. But you could call and find out and go with your mask if they're willing, or talk over the phone, or again, take advantage of the services that are being streamed. Also, there are many, many webinars. Every facility under the sun seems to be doing them during this period. And I'm enjoying them and learning a lot because I can't drive. And many of these things I never get to go to, but I am now being able to take advantage of them. But that would be true for caregivers too. So if you kind of try and keep up with that, I think it would be helpful for you. You get your tips and another source of support and what other people are going through, or ideas of things. I saw one where they have a little robot that helps with caregiving in the home. Things like that are very helpful, or could be very helpful. I hope they are. So kind of keep your eyes and ears open, because everybody's trying to help and or taking advantage of this for marketing, but whatever helps you out in what you're doing, and your loneliness and sadness and fear when you can't be doing it in person.
Very much so. And one of the things that I've suggested to people is, particularly if they're talking to a loved one who they can't go and visit, whether that is someone who is vulnerable or it's with another family member. When you're not on the phone, write a list of things that you enjoy talking about and you know they enjoy talking about. So then when you get on the telephone or you get on the Zoom meeting, you actually have already ideas of what you can discuss, because you'd think that we all were, you know, great at doing that. But in reality, oftentimes we freeze up. And to actually have, you know, just a little list, and you don't have to go through each one. You know, it could be things like remembering, you know, talking about if someone still has memory, you know, talking about memories that the person still has. If it's something where the person may have less memory, just being in the moment. It could be reading a poem or reading over the phone a short story, or if you're a person of faith, reading sections from your book of choice. if someone actually does have really good memory, it could be, you know, comparing recipes, talking about family members. And I think that that's the piece that people are going to have to be more intentional at the moment, because it would be very easy to just talk about what we're denied and what our fears are and the uncertainty in the world.
Lily, that's wonderful, because so many people have told me, well, I call, but she doesn't have anything to talk about. And if you come prepared with something to talk about, that is perfect. Thank you for that. And reading the Bible or reading a story or having a grandchild read a story to the grandparent, what would make them happier? Just little things. That's perfect. Thank you.
Completely. And I think it's this piece where at the moment, if we can use our human ingenuity to actually connect with each other, and that connection could be something so simple, because I think one of the hardest bits is that people, if they're not getting out, are getting stuck. They're getting stuck in the four walls of their reality.
And they feel very stuck. They don't, I think the more stuck you get, the less able you are to see avenues out of that you still have, like getting in touch with people. We've all got telephones. And some of us can find out we have other things like Zoom and WebEx that we never heard of before. And maybe there's, if you don't know how to do it, you might have an adult child, or better yet, a teenager who could come over and set that up for you and show you how to work it, operate it, I should say. But there are a lot of things out there that can help us. But the more depressed we get, the harder it is to see it, and probably to even hear the options. But we got to keep trying. And self-care with exercise, good food, try to get good sleep, and as many distractions as you can find that will help you, positive things that you can bring into your life. Oh no, you couldn't take a puppy dog over a telephone, but if you could do a Zoom, pets are really good too. But I don't know how that would work. Well, if you were talking to somebody outside the nursing home through a window, you could bring a pet.
And I actually, I saw some of those things. Yeah, and I saw something on the county's virtual recreation center where there's a nonprofit that through like a Zoom meeting, you can have a virtual connection with a pet, and including a farm animal.
That's wonderful. Because we miss well, I miss, our people aren't here yet. We haven't gotten the adult daycare back, but we always had a dog show with one of the dog training places in Greenbelt. And they came in every other month and did a dog show for our participants. And I miss it. So I would imagine, hopefully some of them do too.
Completely. That's so well put, Sister Kathy. Thank you. So we've talked about the fact that people are now not joining in-person caregiver support groups, and they're doing those via phone or through WebEx. What about your Holy Cross Caregiver Resource Center? Can people still call?
Oh yes, with a million questions. And very often it's for referrals. They need a psychologist or a psychiatrist or a therapist. And I have numbers available that I can give to them, and references, and care management companies, which is a good beginning if you're trying to find services for your loved one, or if they want nursing homes in such and such a place, or assisted living, or daycare, anything that can help, we can refer them to. And they have resources, as I do. We have the Senior Source Book and Montgomery County's Adult Resource Center book, where all that stuff is listed. And whether they know that or not, and in the Senior Beacon is also a wonderful resource. So we've got lots and lots of resources for people. And I'm very comfortable getting those calls and kind of getting, a lot of people don't know those things are out there until they need them.
Yes.
Until after they need them, I guess. But
exactly.
They're ready to be helped that way, yes.
Beautiful. And what number should they call you at Holy Cross Caregiver Resource Center?
301-754-7152.
Would you mind just repeating that?
301-754-7152. 7152. And my email address is weberk@holycrosshealth.org, all lowercase.
And I'll get you to repeat.
You're from here that way too.
Good. And if you could just repeat that also.
weberk@holycrosshealth.org, all lowercase.
So Sister Kathy, this has been an amazing interview. We've come to the end of it. In the final moments, what final words do you have? Maybe some advice or inspiration you have for caregivers?
First of all, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity and tell our caregivers that even though I don't know who you are, caregivers are always in my thoughts and prayers. And there are two signs in our support group room that I kind of like to share with people. One came from Fixer Upper on the home care channel, or not home care, building, house and care, whatever it is. Anyway, it says, let whatever you do today be enough. And think of that when you go to bed. So you're not worrying about what you didn't do or thinking you should have done more or whatever. Whatever you do today, let it be enough. And the other one, which is stressing self-care, says something like, take care of yourself. You cannot pour from an empty cup. And one of our student interns made that for us before she left. So I thought that was and that's the one they look at more than the one on the wall, the fancy one. So try to keep both of those in mind for your own self-care, and put self-care at the top of your list, because if anything happens to you, the whole structure collapses. And that's the last thing in the world you want to happen. So thank you. Give me a call if I can help in any way, or even if I can't, I can listen. And I am thinking of you and hoping that things get better for all of us, that all these days will pass and we'll get back to normal. But until then, hang in there and keep trying and take care of yourself. Thank you.
That's so beautifully put, Sister Kathy, and you are always an inspiration for me. So everyone, you have been listening to and watching an episode of Engage at Home, brought to you by the county's Caregiver Support Program. I will be featuring the links that Sister Kathy mentioned on Engage at Home. So it's going to be easy for you to learn about Holy Cross Caregiver Resource Center, its support groups, and other resources. I wish you well, and I remind you all to stay calm,